Hello, and welcome to End Goals, an LCMS Youth Ministry podcast. I'm host Reverend Mark Kiesling, and I'm with DCE Juliana Schultz. We are here to bring parents, church workers, and lay leaders discussions and resources to help your youth ministry meet its end goal, which is young people who are disciples of Jesus Christ for life. Today, we're going to talk about taking care of yourself as an adult leader at the gathering.
The LCMS Youth Gathering is quickly approaching, and I know many of our adult leaders are eagerly putting the final pieces together before the event. So many of our adult leaders are focused on making sure their youth have an amazing experience. We're so grateful for that. We know your focus is on your young people, but we also want to make sure that your adult leaders have a positive and healthy experience as well. We want you to enjoy the gathering and get stuff out of it.
Absolutely. And today we're going to bring on a couple of planners from our adult leader resource team to talk about how adult leaders can more than just survive, but thrive during the gathering. First up is Annie Anderson, is a DCE preschool director and preschool teacher. Wow, all three roles in one at Hosanna Lutheran Church and Little Palms Preschool in Mesa, Arizona. Endure 2025 will be her 9th LCMS Youth Gathering as a participant, adult leader, or planner. She has a passion for empowering and equipping adult leaders to point the younger generation to Christ. Together with her husband, Reverend Timothy Anderson, they are in the process of adopting 2 siblings out of foster care. Oh, and they have a dog appropriately named Phoenix. That's fantastic. I love it.
That. And then also joining us is Pastor Peter Couser, campus pastor at Concordia Prep, formerly Baltimore Lutheran High School in Townsend, Maryland, and is the mission developer of New Thing Lutheran Church, which meets in a school as was chartered in June of 2022. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much. We're excited to be here.
Definitely. So tell us more about, we heard a little about you in the bios, but tell us more about your vocations and things that bring you joy.
Yeah, so I love all things The Gathering. The Gathering was a huge influence in my life when it came to why God called me into ministry. My very first gathering was the youth gathering in New Orleans in 2001, and I was in high school. But that was a year where they asked some planners to have some of their students also help them in the planning process. So I was on the interest center team as a high school sophomore through senior through the prep period. And I loved the planning so much that it made me realize how much I love ministry. And so that's a huge piece for me, and that I'm just honored to be a part of the gathering. This is my second time as a planner. And I love the adult resource team because we get the unique opportunity to truly help adult leaders, like you said, not only have a great time, but also thrive and learn so many things themselves and grow as leaders in teaching the faith and passing on the faith to the next generation.
Yeah, I had a re-entry into youth gatherings in Minneapolis, and it'd been almost 20 years since I had been to a youth gathering. And it was significant in 2 ways. One, our team had to put 4 kids on a plane the last full day of the gathering because they'd broken the covenant.
Oh.
And it was a incredibly chaotic last full day. And then the day we left, the next day, I was sitting in the parking lot of the football stadium on our chartered bus waiting to leave, finally checking my voicemail messages and seeing I had a voicemail message from a circuit visitor in Maryland. I was serving in Texas at the time, saying, hey, we have this unique ministry opportunity and your name is on our list. And I remember listening to it, handing the phone across the aisle to my wife and saying, listen to this. This is crazy. When we get back, I will tell them, I'm not interested. I was very happy serving where I was in Fort Worth, Texas at the time. And then through some crazy Holy Spirit tapping on my shoulder stuff over the next few months, I ended up in Maryland, which is where I am now. And yet all of that really stirred in me how important it is for adult leaders to take care of themselves, because we had some really challenging stuff with that gathering. So this is my first time on the planning side. And it's so important that adult leaders come in and realize, I know you're there for your kids and you're not going to even know what day it is most of the time you're there. It's just a lot. You're going, but you got to take care of yourselves. And I really have a different perspective from that experience that we had in Minneapolis.
Well, thanks for your investment in this process and certainly lifting this up. And just want to go into what Peter just said a little bit more. Is why is it important for adult leaders in the different vocations which they're serving, even on site at the youth gathering, but outside of that too, with what's going on back home? Why is it important for adult leaders to take care of themselves as they serve on the days of the gathering?
I would say, first of all, you're going to put more, if you got a step counter on your wrist, you're going to put a whole lot of steps on that thing, and you're going to look down, it's going to go, it's 10 a.m. And so you're going to be running around. You're going to be making sure your students are getting to, some various things to hear about Jesus, to get to the Bible study, that they're getting food. Someone's going to forget something at the hotel. And so in the midst of all that, you're a real person, and you are there hearing the same theme of endure. And you've got your own lenses that you're looking at that in whatever capacity you serve in your church, whether you're a volunteer, you're a paid staff, you're a called worker, with things that you have going on in your own personal life. And so it's really important. Our adult leader team has put things in place so that you can make sure that sometimes you can shut things down and go, okay, my kids are going to be okay for the next few moments. They're all in sessions. I can take a few minutes, maybe to put my feet up, maybe to charge my phone, maybe to meet somebody that's at the gathering you haven't seen in a while, maybe just to talk to somebody about something you're dealing with in your personal life, ministry life. And I certainly have seen in my own life how it's important to leverage the time when you're at a gathering like this to maybe just take 30 minutes to say, you know what, I need some me time. What might that look like? And we've tried to make it very easy for a bunch of on-ramps for them to have some me time.
Yeah. And to go along with that, I think that, when you're on an airplane and they tell you that to put your air mask on before the mask of a child or someone else next to you that needs help. We as adult leaders, I know myself as an adult leader, let alone as a mom, I tend to want to just make sure everybody else's needs are okay before my own. But if you're not getting oxygen, if you're not getting the sustenance that you need to survive, then you're no good and no help to anyone else throughout the day and throughout the gathering. And so as an adult leader, we have to be mindful of our own needs, both physical needs when it comes to food. I know sometimes there have been times where I didn't really eat lunch because I was just chasing teenagers around, making sure that they were doing what they should be doing. And then I would get shaky throughout the day because I had too much caffeine and not enough protein. And so realizing, hold up, I got to take care of my body right now so that I can then continue to point them to Jesus throughout this event and throughout this day. So totally, Peter's spot on.
And I think it's okay for adult leaders to be telling their young people, I am hangry right now.
Yeah.
And I want to have this conversation with you, or I want to make this decision with you, or I want to be participatory with you. But I am a person who requires something right now. And can we wait? Or, hey, I'm sorry I responded to you in that way. I didn't get enough sleep last night. And I need to apologize for the way that I talk to you. Can we make this right? Because teens know that those adults are people too.
Absolutely.
And I think this kind of event, well, what I was going to say is, I think at an event like this, it's different from a 2-hour youth event on a Sunday night. It's different from an event where you go and you play putt-putt or you have a Bible study. You're around each other 24/7 for that 6 days or 7 days or whatever it looks like between traveling there, traveling home. And your students are going to see you when the curtains peel back a little bit, when you are tired, when it's a mass event has happened. It's taken a while to get back to the hotel. And, now we're going to have some time to kind of connect and talk about our highs and lows from the day. Or the next morning you get up and maybe you missed your alarm, or, something happened where you didn't get to sleep right away, or you just couldn't let your mind settle. And so to be honest with your students, and to be honest with your other leaders, if you're traveling with more adult leaders, and say, hey, I'm going to need a few minutes, or I'm sorry I was short with you last night. Here's what was going on in my world. I feel like these are great opportunities for our youth to see exactly what you said, Annie, that we are real people and we're processing life and this gathering right along with you. So I think it's a great opportunity, different from just doing the kind of the programmatic week in, week out church ministry stuff that we do with our youth.
Well, and ministry is relationships, right? And so especially on trips like this, we have an opportunity to be real with our students and to help them understand that, repair is important. Forgiveness is important in any conflict. And so that level of transparency and honesty with your students in the tough moments and the celebration moments is super duper important for them then being connected not only with you, but also your congregation, your church, your pastor, everything, the whole system when they come home. Because coming home from the gathering is a whole different bucket than just being at the gathering.
So we've hit a couple of them already, but like for you guys, what are some of the things that if an adult is not paying attention to for themselves that might cause them problems as they're experiencing a big event like the gathering?
I would say one is hydration. I would think that's important. Having comfortable walking shoes is really important.
Yes.
I think also to communicate well with your students, and if you have other leaders, of ways that you can have some moments, I won't say off the grid, but moments where you need to focus on you for a moment. And so, like, if you have multiple adult leaders say, hey, will you be on call during this time? I really want to get to this session or this affinity group, or I just need to go have 30 minutes to go do my own little quiet time devotion, or I just need to walk, right? If you've been sitting for a while. And so I think that communication stuff is really important, but that you're caring for yourself, and that maybe even you go into the gathering, because we ask our students this, what do you want to get from the gathering? But to ask yourself, like, what can I go in with an expectation like, okay, I really want, as you look at the sessions and go, this is something I really want to get to. And you say, okay, how do I make sure that I take the time? And so when stuff happens and all of a sudden it's like, okay, I can give that up. No, I'm going to make sure that I have that time. Or if there's a really good friend that is going to be at the gathering, to say, you know what, I'm going to keep that and make sure that I find a way. Because even, I had a situation at the gathering a few years ago where we had to kind of put a lot of things on hold, and I had to cancel some other things because I had to deal with the situation. But I had a really good friend that was at the gathering, and they were in a time of transition. And so I made sure that I could meet with them, even though it was a little shorter than we wanted. But we found a way to just connect over a cup of coffee just so that I could lock eyes with them, find out how they were doing, pray with them. And it was so good for my soul. And then I was actually better to engage in the situation we were in the midst of. But I had to communicate that to some other leaders and say, I need to step out for a moment. This is really important, even though we're dealing with another issue.
Well, and I think that that's an important thing to note is that communication within your team of adult leaders that are leading your youth is really important. And making sure that, like for my group right now, we only have 2 adult leaders for this gathering. And making sure that those 2 are super duper connected to one another, and not only, knowing cell phone numbers and texting and all that, but like being able to tell as a friend, hey, are you okay right now? Do you need to step away for a moment? And having that communication line open among adult leaders in the church group is, I think, invaluable in this situation.
Well, and I think about all the adult leaders who are coming, who are taking their vacation time to be there.
Yes.
Right? Or who have left children at home with someone, a spouse or grandparents, and how much they need to be thinking about both taking care of themselves physically, taking care of the group in front of them, but not being able to take care of the things that they need to, so they're not feeling constantly anxious about not being present in their regular lives too, right? And so I think sometimes those things can trip us up as well. So what would you guys say are some of the best practices for those adult leaders who are wanting to bring them their best self, maybe, or what are those best practices you would suggest for them to thrive in an event like the gathering?
I would say a big one is, if your team has not put together some kind of covenant, and involve your youth in developing that covenant, how we're going to act around each other, how we're going to act when we're at various things at the gathering, how we're going to deal with technology so that we're engaging where we are. I mean, technology is a huge part of our lives. And so we have our Bible on it. We take notes on it. We take pictures with it. But also, I know it's been really important for our groups to figure out times where we're going to say, we're going to put the technology aside because we need our sleep. Or we're going to make sure that we have our youth's best interest at heart. You're dealing with, if you've got a team of adult leaders, you've got some folks that maybe haven't been around other youth in that magnitude for that long. And so to keep saying, hey, let's have our kids' best interest at heart, let's listen well to them and figure out how we're going to make sure that the communication lines stay open, but we also trust our youth as they walk around the convention center, as they pick and choose some of the things that they want to do. And that covenant gives you something you can go back to so that you can encourage and kind of prime the pump, so to speak, with your youth and your leaders. But also when you do have to have the hard conversations, you can say, hey, this is something we all agreed to. And we actually have also done covenants just amongst, if you're with a team of adult leaders, of how we're going to interact and the way we're going to care for each other. And I've been very blessed in some of the teams that I've been a part of where one of the adult leaders took it upon themselves to make sure they knew the favorite beverage of every other adult leader. So they had that cup of Joe in the morning or that Diet Mountain Dew or whatever it was, so that those leaders felt cared for. Little goodie bags or things that you can give to your adult leader in the morning or something like that, a little survival kit. So I think the covenant is really important. If you haven't had those conversations yet, you really should.
I agree. And the way that you hold each other accountable to that covenant matters. Not only adults to students, but also adults to adults. And just laying out the ideas of here's how we can hold each other accountable, that we'll talk about it. We'll follow Matthew 18 if the conflict is super duper deep, and we'll figure it out. I think that accountability in the relationships and communication across the whole group, but especially adult leaders, is important.
We heard a great practice in one of the gathering updates. It was not this month, but the month before, I think, where they talked about having the adult leaders all have a code word of some kind or a phrase that they could say to another adult leader that was sort of their tap out moment.
Yeah.
Where like, hey, I have hit a threshold, right? Which we all do, especially when you've been guiding other people's teenagers for days, right? And you're on 24/7 to say like, I am self-aware enough to know this, I am not in a good headspace and I need to tap out, right? And I need you to tap in, right? And being able to trust each other to be able to do that, to have a team where you can say like, I need a coffee, right? And just like for that adult leader to go, okay, I need to cover, the situation here, can be super helpful. And I talk about this. This is so practical. This is the thing I've been talking about this whole cycle is like, if you have more than one adult, if you can get at least one adult to have a good night's sleep,
Yes,
who can come into their day with a little bit more mental clarity than everyone else. And like, you are the big decision maker for the day, right? And things that we need to do on the fly, or the kids that you need to talk to on the fly, they're being obnoxious, right, is given to the adult who has the better capacity in that moment, or the driver, right, for the days on your way back.
and I would say also, if you are traveling with a team and you have other adult leaders, to find a way, if you say, hey, we're all going to meet up as a group at such and such a time, have your adult leaders get there 10 minutes earlier so that you guys can check in, huddle up, kind of get the sense of the temperature of how everybody's doing. You don't have to use the code words, although in my head, I'm thinking of all those cool words that would be my code word, probably chocolate, actually. But to have a way that you can process and kind of huddle up. And then if you're traveling solo to the gathering with a group, think about, are there other youth leaders in your area or somebody where you could do a similar thing and say, hey, could we find ways for maybe our groups at certain times could meet up in the same area where I could meet with you while I'm waiting for my youth so that we could check in. I mean, find somebody who can be a travel buddy, who can hold you accountable, that kind of can get you a little bit. And sometimes you just need someone to bounce an idea off, because sometimes your decision-making ability really is depleted by 11:30 at night after a mass event plus thing, So have those folks around you that you can kind of look them in the eye and they can ask you the hard questions sometimes, like, what do you need right now? Or how can I help you?
Well, and even beyond that, as an adult leader, there are going to be moments where you just need to vent to someone safe, whether it's about your adults or about your youth. I had a gathering, gosh, I don't even remember what year, where I was beyond frustrated with one of my adult leaders. They were not really following our covenant. They kind of were going off and doing their own thing and not checking in with their small group of kids. And so I had to hold them accountable. And there was one day where I was just tapped. Like, I wish I had had a code word so that I could say, I need a minute because I got to deal with this adult situation. The kids were fine, but I was so frustrated with this one adult leader. And I remember at the time that I ended up calling one of my best friends back home, not connected to my church. So like zero, any connection. And I just was like, hey, can I vent for a minute? And I didn't even say any names, didn't say anything. I'm an external processor. And so I just needed to tell someone what was going on in my head. And she, being a strong Christian herself, was like, her only wisdom and advice was, can I pray for you right now? And I loved that because I was like, that was the reset that I needed in my anger and frustration to help not only my own emotional regulation, but also to realize, okay, God's got a purpose for this person, this adult leader on this trip. And that God might be speaking to them too in a different way. And that my frustration with what they're not doing might be communication for what they need too. And so for me as an adult, as the primary adult leader and the DCE, the lead leader, to try to figure out and not be frustrated. But I had to get over my own frustration first, and to call someone and have that support set aside outside of your trip is also sometimes important. Like now it would be my spouse. I'd call my husband and be like, I'm going to vent for a minute. And then he'd be like, okay. And he'd hold it confidential and we'd let it go.
We talk oftentimes for the young people attending the gathering about the kind of cloud of witnesses that are back home supporting them, but great for adult leaders to be thinking about that as well in terms of whether he said it's a spouse, it's a good friend, it's another member at the church, that to have that outlet to be able to keep people focused, be in prayer.
Yes.
We'd love to hear churches that have kind of prayer warriors back home that are lifting up the adult leaders maybe by name or youth by name. I'd be looking to do that and even have maybe that connection that you can make back there. As someone who's out of the fray of all the activity that's happening, to be able to pray specifically about things and also be able to have those conversations can be such a vital, important, certainly support for our adult leaders that do that.
Yeah.
I think a lot of conversations that we've been having, covenants, other things that have taken place is maybe around this word boundaries, boundaries that are set up for the youth that are now in a very different context of not being at home, a different rhythm with the youth gathering, but also for our adult leaders too. Maybe talk a little bit about what does that look like, setting boundaries for healthy connections for adults. Maybe what are some of the boundaries that might be helpful?
I think one of the things that really comes to mind for me, Mark, is something that happened when I was on a mission trip many, many years ago. Pastor Carlos Berger, things didn't go as planned, and part of it was my fault. And I remember he pulled me aside and he said, and I think about people that have planned the gathering. You know, your youth, you've been doing fundraisers, you've been trying to get everybody's payments in, and you've been trying to get all the paperwork done and all of these logistics. And then you get to the gathering and a student will be sick. And so somebody's got to stay back at the hotel. You know, a situation will arise that you never saw coming. And so to deal with the boundary thing, I think part of it is realizing like the journey is the journey. And so sometimes when things don't go well, or from our perspective, something goes awry, that may be where God shows up in the most profound way at the gathering when things kind of go sideways. And so I remember Carlos Berger said to me, and I think about Nehemiah when he was rebuilding the wall, he didn't pray for all the stuff to go away. He simply prayed, Lord, strengthen my hands, which to me is a prayer of endurance, which is what this gathering is all about. And so I think, to go back to your thing on boundaries, it's really important that regardless of what your youth experience, what you as an adult leader experience, you just say, we're going to talk. And we're not going to talk behind the scenes. Like if you have an issue with a decision that's made, if you are struggling with somebody in the group, you end up being in this little incubator, like you get put into roommate situations and you're sharing bathrooms and somebody's always late when it's group check-in time or whatever those things are. Like I think it's really important that you say, we're going to keep communication lines open. And then if there's a moment where you're feeling like, as Annie said earlier, like I just need to vent, to know that there's healthy ways to do that and there are not healthy ways to do that, that we can go back to the covenant and say, hey, this is what we agreed to be and to do, This is how we're going to relate with each other. And yet sometimes the ways that that shows itself in its most beautiful ways are when you don't get what you want, or when I don't get what I want, or when that curveball comes, or when, at a mass event, as adult leaders, we kind of know, okay, here's some of the things that we might need to pay attention to tonight. Well, then all of a sudden it hits us on a personal level. And so we're not at a capacity where we can walk with a youth that's dealing with that because we need to. And so I think all of that comes back to how do we make sure we communicate? And so sometimes to say, hey, I need to tap out, or I need to have this conversation with this person because it's been nagging me all day. And so I just think it's really important that we realize that sometimes in those curveballs and those gut punches and those surprises, those are the moments when God shows up the most. And so not to neglect those or not go, man, this day was awful because this happened. But part of it is saying, this was part of the day. And so let's talk about it, because that's where the life on life stuff really, the roots grow deeper in Christ and with each other.
I think you've talked about the covenant several times, and I think both covenant in terms of your adult leaders, covenant with your group, covenants around technology. I think the more explicit we are about expectations, the more explicit we are about this is okay, this is not okay, but also making sure our parents are engaged and partnering with us in that covenanting process, right? I feel like our technology right now allows for a kid to have their feelings hurt or to have a conflict, and then it immediately goes to mom and dad rather than going internally to the group where we can handle it face to face the way we want to. Or our kids are just ignoring parents because they're so excited, and then parents are feeling like they're neglected, right? There's lots of ways that technology and communication can help us. As adult leaders, we can get ourselves into trouble making sure that we're good partners with parents. So making sure parents and you are on the same page about like, hey, when something happens here, somebody doesn't get their way, there's a curveball, I didn't get to go to the session I wanted to, or my roommates, I don't know, stole the bathroom this morning and I didn't get the time that I normally get to do my hair. Those kinds of things that we're like, okay, when you told mom and dad that, mom and dad told you to tell me that because we have to deal with that here right now in New Orleans and not triangulating it back at home, right? So I'm making sure you are in a place where you have your parents who are helping you set good boundaries too.
Absolutely. And I think that not underestimating our students and their capacity and ability to grow and to make wise choices. I think sometimes some adult leaders just are not all like on board with thinking that their kids are capable, and they are. Like our teenagers are a lot smarter and brighter and more with it than we give them credit for. And so to, in a sense, say, I know you got this, and just be that encouraging voice behind them and catching them in the good moments when they do make the wise choices, when they do uphold the boundaries, and when they do respect whatever it is that you set in the covenant. Catching them in those good moments is really, really good for all of it, for setting the relationship or deepening that relationship that we have with our kids.
And I've watched students that have gone to the gathering and you think, man, this is going to be so great for them. And they're just kind of detached and they're kind of struggling engaging. And I think sometimes we go into kind of a helicopter parenting mode there of, okay, now I need to jump in. And sometimes with the boundaries, it's best to go to maybe one of your student leaders and to say, hey, will you invite so-and-so when you're going to the next sessions, or you're going, or things like that, and let them minister to each other, and sometimes stand back and let your youth minister to the other youth in your group, and actually to walk with them and encourage them and let them sort some of that out. Like every roommate drama, you're not just going to go, okay, you guys are switching rooms, let's do that. Yeah. But sometimes that's going to help them when they go off to college and they get potluck roommate and they got some kid that they're like, what did I put on my survey that I got matched up with this kid? And so I think the gathering is a great opportunity to really pray for discernment. When do I need to fix this? When is this a problem that needs to be fixed? And when is it an opportunity for our youth to shine, or for them to sort through some things a little bit and have some lingering time in the context of this incredible gathering of all these people where God is present, the Spirit is moving, for them to maybe have a breakthrough moment that if you step in every time, they may miss. And so I think it's really a big part of the boundaries thing, Mark, is discernment and saying, okay, right now, do I let my youth kind of figure this out a little bit? Because that, for the first time, for a lot of these youth that are going, and we've got a group here from our school and church that's going, and many of them have never been down south. They've never been to Louisiana. They've certainly never been to New Orleans, and they've never been to a gathering of this magnitude. And there's a little culture shock that's going to hit some of our youth that first day. And so to let them kind of get up to the speed to where they can process where they are and work through some of the dynamics that are involved and not feel like you got to jump in on every little thing that you hear. You know, you might have an adult leader that's a little more Chicken Little at times and go, oh, we got to deal with this. And sometimes in that moment, I've felt like, no, let's let them sort through that a little bit.
Yeah. So you guys are both a part of the Adult Leader Resource Team. Can you tell us a little bit about what that team is responsible for?
Yeah, so the Adult Leader Resource Team, this is my second gathering cycle on that team. We're responsible for a whole lot of things. We're responsible for orientation, some stuff to empower and equip adult leaders before the gathering, plus then orientation on site, as well as the adult leader relaxation area, affinity groups, and adult leader sessions, plus then kind of just some different stuff throughout and different resources and stuff throughout the gathering, both before, during, and after. I love our adult leader resource team. I think that this is such a unique opportunity to empower our adult leaders across the synod as they dig deep into ministry with teenagers. There's so many adult leaders, right? That we get an opportunity to not only speak Christ into them and encourage their faith and spiritual life, but also continue to give them tools and resources in helping their kids, their students, their youth understand who Jesus is and why they're here on this earth. What is their purpose? What is their calling? What's their vocation? All those things. So the Adult Leader Resource Team is an incredible resource for adult leaders.
It is, right? And we have such a fantastic, we have a lot. How many adult leaders do we think we have in this group?
4,000. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Which is awesome. Yeah. So we always say the LCMS Youth Gathering is also the largest gathering of adults within the church body. And certainly it's probably 5 days where we really are investing in your work, working with young people. And we're so thankful for the ways that you invest in parents and young people as part of your congregation and community. But we also hope, too, that you can come to the gathering and be refreshed in all the vocations in which you serve and be able to meet other people and be encouraged in your life of Christ and your life in the church as we see you as not only leaders in youth ministry, but leaders in your congregation who are bringing, we hope, healthy boundaries and healthy connection across the board. What did maybe have you talk specifically about two things that had happened? You kind of mentioned them is, again, adult sessions that'll be taking place throughout the gathering, and also affinity groups. But how can those be supportive for our adults who are attending?
I'll set the table for you. How about that? I think one thing that's really important with the adult sessions and the affinity groups is honestly the 5 minutes before and the 5 minutes after those sessions and those groups. Because we talk about with our youth, like you're going to be blown away to realize this many young people are leaning in on who Jesus is. But that's the same for adult leaders. And so my hope is that as you go into some of these sessions and affinity groups and you mix and mingle, maybe even the relaxation zone with other adults, that you start to go, oh, there's another volunteer who works 50 hours a week, is raising kids, and took time out of their vacation schedule to come to the gathering. Or, wow, I met another DCE, or I met another deaconess, or I met another pastor who cares about young people, but is also sorting through X, Y, and Z. And so if you can get into those groups a little bit early, one, because they fill up fast, but two, that you take time and just say, hey, where are you from? And how are you doing? And what's the highlight of the gathering so far? Or, you know, if the layers get peeled back, how can I pray for you? Like, those are the things that don't appear in the box score necessarily of the gathering. But to me, they're some of the greatest takeaway moments when I just realize, oh, there are other people like me who are seeking to pour into the next generation. Mm-hmm. And that, besides all the wonderful topics and things they'll get to discuss and hear, is one of the things that draws me back every time. And why I'm excited for the first time to be on this side of the planning and be a part of this adult leader team.
Yeah, every gathering I have had new friendships that are formed for me, even as an adult. And so I agree, Peter, that those 5 minutes before and after a session or an affinity group of just starting to network a little bit and getting to know other adult leaders can be so much fun, and let alone just enriching for your own development. Affinity groups are a unique opportunity for adult leaders to have more of that, more opportunity around a shared mission or a shared experience to truly then dig in a little bit deeper with a facilitator leading the conversation. So they're kind of just roundtable conversations about a topic, about a ministry style, a whole bunch of different things. There's a whole bunch of different offerings. And so I really encourage you to check it out so that you can then see if there are any that are interesting to you and your place in ministry, or maybe where God might be calling you into ministry as a volunteer, as a adult leader, as a professional. There's a lot of opportunities for your growth there.
Well, thank you guys for joining us on the podcast and for talking a little bit about this. And hopefully, adult leaders that you're listening to this, that you are ready to jump in to take care of yourself. And maybe we'll see you at some of those adult sessions and affinity groups. Well, I'm partial to the adult leader resource team because it's the one that I get to work with the most. And I do think we have made a really intentional effort, even before that was the team that I worked with, to say, like, we want to care well for the adult leaders who are coming to this gathering. We want them to not only have an excellent event, but that they come in and feel like they have been cared for by our team, by other planners, by the program, that they get to experience God and His Word, that they leave feeling more empowered to do youth ministry. And that's our goal, right?
Yeah, I think, when we talk again about the gathering outside of LCMS or outside of maybe church work type activities in ministry, is that, like, our people are kind of amazed when we say, like, these are adult leaders. Some are church workers. Certainly it's part of their career. But these are other adults who give up vacation time, give up all this to invest in young people in their congregation. And there are some people that just give us a look like, these are amazing adults. We're like, yes, they are.
They are amazing adults.
That they do this because they care. And that's what Christ's love is, shared in this church. And to invest in the next generation is just amazing. So know that you have people looking at you, at convention center workers and dome workers, who are marvel at what you do to bring young people to an event like this. So thank you again for all the investment that you make in a young person. That, again, it's was said so many times too, like, I marvel at how the Holy Spirit works through your ministry and your congregation, how He works through places where God promises to be in word and sacrament, and then certainly these relationships that get built around the gathering, that we're so thankful for that and see it impact the life of a young person. So thank you.
So a couple of closing questions for you to consider. First, how are you setting you and your group up for success by having a really fantastic covenant?
Who are supporters back home, whether that be in your local church or community, that are praying for you and are willing to take that phone call from you that you may need during the days of the youth gathering?
And what adult sessions or affinity groups are you excited to participate in? We will continue to keep you in our prayers. We are so grateful for you, and we know the gathering is a wonderful, challenging event that you have been planning for. We pray that it is a blessing to you as well.
End Goals Podcast is a production of LCMS Youth Ministry and KFUO Radio. To find links mentioned in the episode or more about LCMS Youth Ministry, go to kfuo.org/youth ministry and find resources for youth ministry at youthesource.com. Thank you for listening and caring for the young people of our church.